Welcome to Sex and Breakfast, the sexy way to start your day. Dishing out sexpert advice and spicy insights about sex, love, and everything in between. Hosted by sex coaches and therapists from around the globe. Hey everyone, in this episode, we're going to take a deep dive into a real live case study. So let's just kind of dive straight into the basic scenario, the basic situation that this couple was dealing with. So I was contacted by a gentleman who wanted sex coaching for his wife. I'm going to call this man Steve. And Steve is feeling like his wife isn't really sexually interested and always turns him down. And his wife, Michaela, we'll call her Michaela, is on the spectrum and is really sensitive to certain types of touch that turns her off. And they have a teenager that she shares custody with another gentleman 50-50. So they have a kid half the time, and they both work full time, and they're also trying to have a kid. So their primary concern was that they're saying the relationship's amazing, they have no complaints in their marriage, but this one area, their sex life, is really far below the bar, and they just want to work on it. So do any of you here have any further questions you'd like me to answer so we could really dive into helping this couple?
Yeah, so I'm when I speak to couples with similar stories, I'm always really curious about what their relationship to their own sexual self is like. Because a lot of times, especially when people arrive for a session, they're both present and their focus is naturally on what they're wanting to fix between the both of them. And it can be totally left field. And often I get these wide eyes when I ask, what's your solo sexual relationship like? So I'm curious if you have some insight about this couple, if they shared that with you.
Yes. So they're really not having any solo practice separately. Generally the husband, Steve, is really only masturbating and doing anything solo when his wife has said no several times in a row. And the wife, Michaela, has never really experimented with her body on a solo way and kind of feels like it's a little gross. So there's not really any exploration on that end as well.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit more here, I think especially this suspicion that Michaela is on the spectrum, even though it's outside of our wheelhouse to diagnose as sex coaches or directly um, approach this. It's definitely welcome information if they have their own ideas about this or had a full evaluation. But I think this is a beautiful place to start because, especially if the person who is saying they have some touch sensitivities, it's really crucial that they know about themselves in that way. And especially then for Steve to move self pleasure and that relationship with the erotic self from a place of just because I'm not getting it from my partner to this different realm of it exists for this whole reason outside of my partner, Michaela, in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have any uh, secondary questions before we kind of really dive into assessing and helping this client?
Yeah, I would love to know. Sorry, just to repeat, what was his exact question again to you?
So, what was his main goal into coming
Yeah,
into
into
sex
sex coaching.
coaching?
Right.
Yeah. So, originally, the main goal was my wife and I don't have a great sex life, and I want you to work with my wife.
Ah,
Where it became, oh, wait, hold on. She's not even in this conversation. And so it ended up becoming a couples session after I had done a individual session with Michaela, getting permission if this is something that she actually wants to work on. And then I assessed that this should actually be something that we do together and not just with Michaela.
thank you. Yeah, I always also do and ask what Norland had asked you as well, like what is your solo practice, and then what is your self-love practices, if any, such as like do something simple for yourself, like apply lotion, spend time listening to music and dancing by yourself. I know it sounds silly to some of you out there, by the way, but that's just what I personally ask, because self-love practices I feel are important, not just in regards to sex.
Thanks for all the questions. I would like to check what is Michaela own's goal for the session.
That's a great question. So, when I spoke to Michaela before we entered into our couples sex coaching agreement and sessions, she really said that she felt like not a sexual being, and she was open to kind of exploring her sexuality. And also, obviously, because her husband was the one that contacted me wanting to make sure that she was fulfilling her husband, and that he was happy and about their sex life together.
So I imagine it will feel like being mandated as well. There's a sense of obligation and the sense of a duty that she needs to fulfill. And another question I have: did they enjoy a good sex life before having children, before they met, or is that something that has changed throughout the time they're together? And how long they've been together again?
Great questions. So they do not have a children together. She has a teenage boy with another man, and she shares that teenager with her someone else that they co-parent. So she has the child 50-50. They are trying to have their own child, and they've been together for 4 years. They were dating for two, and they've been married for almost 2 years. And their sex life was a little bit more exciting when they were dating, but not so much. It's kind of been a little mediocre. Well, their word mediocre since they've been together, but every other aspect of their relationship has been so great. And this is kind of that last area that they really want to work on.
Sorry, I'm going to throw in another question. Is any problem with conceiving? And age range are they?
Um, so Michaela is 27 and Steve is 32. And they haven't had any they've just decided to get started, so they're not having any issues conceiving or anything like that. So that's kind of just a sidebar of what's going on in their personal lives. So and I love all these questions, and this is something also for our listeners to be aware of, as as sex coach. um Not every this is kind of maybe a generic, not generic situation, but like mixed match libido, wanting better sex life. But all the questions we ask are so tailored to this one couple, and having to help them in a very specific way, which is something that I think is very different when you just kind of Google, like, oh, I want to work on my sex life. So I love the questions that we're getting that really kind of enhance and help you understand kind of what's going through our minds when we start to meet a new potential client. Now we're going to get into some strategies and suggestions that we have for this couple. And I didn't go deep down into her neurodiversity, but I did suggest there's a great article that talks about the four or five love languages for neurodivergent people. And that was really helpful for them to both to just start the conversation about things that might feel different and be different based off of her neurodiversity. So that allowed us to kind of open that conversation a little bit of a broad way. Also, we dived really into what, like Norlin said, what their own personal, sexual life needs to look like, and focusing on themselves. So, what are some other strategies or suggestions that some of you might have with working with this couple?
Nicole, if I can also add here, I had some experience working with a couple who are neurodiverse and they also have difficulties with sensory issue. And what I found it helpful is to refer them to see occupational therapists. So if you have occupational therapists in the area who specializes with such clients, of course, each treatment going to be very different and, like you say, tailor made to each couple. They can do things like sensory profiling, questionnaire, and quizzes. So, and then they will discover what kind of sensory profile they are. It could be that one person could be, for example, I'm just plucking this up from the air. One is a very sensory seeker, so they prefer certain touch or a certain a bit more firm, and the other one is sensory avoidance. So it's just understanding those could be a really game changer, so that later on when we give them some exercise or some example, or some homework to do, it could build up to the knowledge that they have. So I thought I'm just gonna add that in actually.
I love that. And that was one of the activities that we did do together, is really exploring and understanding what senses and touch felt good and which ones really, turned her off and kind of made her almost, to her verbs, like wanted to throw up. Like it just made her squirm in her skin. And he was able to discover like, oh, all of those like really soft, gentle touches were really throwing her off and did not keep her in the mood. And she needed like a firm touch, or grip when he's just touching her body.
I love that. And then also wanted to add about, I think it would be, I like to use love languages in my um, coaching practice as well. So finding out what her love language is might be good. So there's the sensory piece, which would tie into the physical touch piece, but also maybe she has a different kind of love language. So y'all know about the 5 love languages, right? Okay. So for those
Yes.
listeners out there who don't know what it is, um, ladies, help me out if I mess it up. But physical touch, words of affirmation, um,
Quality
service.
time.
Yeah, quality time. Yes, I think. And then there's one more, quality time, and then
Acts of service
acts of service. I already did that.
and
Yeah,
gifts.
gifts. That's the one. Gift giving. So kind of finding out what her love language is. Also, that's what I like to do in these kinds of circumstances. I think it's beneficial for the client.
So I would, whenever I have a couple who says, our relationship is amazing except for this, I always congratulate them and hold space and honor the fact that they feel that way. That's amazing. But I don't gloss over it. I find creative ways to, while holding up the positive perception they have of that, I take them through a little audit and say, well, please do share. I don't want it to sound accusatory and like I don't believe them, because I do. But often I find if I have them explain to me what their favorite things are about the relationship, and they're doing it in front of me in the safe container, some things kind of come out that are either slightly off or their perception of certain things, and some like unmet needs arise in areas that are outside the container of sex, which we all know is ultimately connected. So once we can identify some of those unmet needs and, not downplay that they feel like the rest of their relationship is amazing. Again, I want to hold up all of the positive feelings they have, but I never I never gloss over that and make sure we touch base on those other amazing parts to see.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Dr. Norling, because when we did kind of peel the layers, there was a lot of, oh, well, we never fight. Well, I'm like, okay, well, and then we discuss things and realize, oh, we're just not communicating, and we're just not sharing the things that are not doing, that we don't like. And therefore they're
Uh-huh.
just kind of getting shoved behind. So it's like there was all this like pent up frustration of, oh, well, I've been telling you that I want to like be more intimate, or I've been telling you that I'm actually more interested in sex than you think, but you're not hearing me. And rather than having discussions, they're just kind of blowing off these things, and saying they're not fighting, but really there's all these unmet needs and things that they're not communicating that's happening way outside of the bedroom. Yeah.
I have some more if no one else has something. I I pull this next thing from my training as a sexological body worker. And I ask people to describe what bliss feels like, what arousal feels like, what excitement feels like, what does enjoyment feel like in the body. Because some of these will be stuck in people's mental neck up realm, like excitement, and they might not be able to articulate what excitement feels like in the body, but they know what it feels like mentally, conceptually. And once we kind of not fine tune, I'm not giving them the answers for this. I'm having them give me what their perception of each is. And if they really start saying things like, I don't know, excitement is the same as bliss, I go, okay, well, maybe let's do a homework assignment that where you find some daily activities that can fall into each category so we can expand their awareness of the different pleasurable sensations. And then usually spend a lot of time on the word pleasure because there can be a gendered difference um, with how people use the word pleasure. Just a sweeping stereotype, but I feel a lot of men um, may disconnect from pleasure in other areas, and pleasure may always equal sex for them. And it may feel very strange to apply the word pleasure to something like eating ice cream. Whereas for a lot of women, it tends to be way more approachable to say, taking a shower is pleasurable, or, XYZ, fill in the blank. So going through and building up the definition of these terms for themselves can be a really powerful experience.
Mm. I want to build up from Dr. Norlin's. I love that the application of sexology body work into this practice. And so, what I would do is to also expand that into what we all, I think we all learn about dual control model, which is the gas and the brake. So I will ask the couple, so what are the contributing factors that block you from feeling the bliss, from the arousal, the excitement? What are the gas factor um, that that what are the break? The break are those things that really blocking that ability to achieve certain level of sensations or feeling and etc. And what are the gas, which is what are the things that contributing, allowing you that easy access to it. And it's all depending on the context, isn't it? If Michaela is so stressed about her teenage son, about her work, about all sorts of stuff, and she has to do house chores on top of many other commitment, then that could be one of the contributing factors to enjoying all that bodily sensation that she has, for example, and vice versa. Um, so, so I also expand this when we come to discussing dual control model, the gas and the brake. Aside from talking about um, other contributing aspect to it, I expand it into as it's not just physical aspect, so it's other factors like a psychological issue in hand. Do they have any mental health issues that they're concerned about? If one of them having a depression, anxiety, etc., or even stress at work, that can be a contributing factor. And then relationship dynamic and environment. If the house is messy, um, they don't have any place to have a, a nice intimate time that can be a contributing factor. So yeah, so Dr. Rosie King used this metaphor of desire could be like a river with many branches, and these branches are those things like the physical aspect. If you don't sleep well, if you are in pain, if you not well, etc. So this can be one of the branch from the river. And then the psychological aspect, hormones, is another branch of the river. And again, environment or even relationship dynamic. So if any of those river get blocked, of course the river, the water that goes to the rivers get smaller and smaller and smaller. But if we can remove that barriers, hopefully the river of desire can flow really well and strongly.
Yeah, that's great. And similar to that, is another test called the erotic blueprint that does give couples and individuals, similar to the love languages, an idea about what they look like and potentially need or want on a sexual perspective of who they are and their identity. But allowing, giving clients the permission to experience and understand what their models are, what makes them tick, what makes them stop, what makes them excited. All of these things allow exploration, not just in their own individual sexuality, but it allows them to also have a way to communicate that with their partner, which is really what was happening with this partnership, is that they really weren't communicating or able to even have the words to say, like, when you do this, I'm turned off, when you do this, it turns me on. And in the end, both of them didn't necessarily get exactly what they wanted, because you're in a relationship with a different person that has a different body and has different needs, but they were able to kind of find a mid ground of what worked and what didn't work for each other, and then find the things in common. And so that process took about 3.5 months of working together, as again, you work with someone and you learn more about them, and then you go, oh wait, I had no idea. Wait, you have never touched you don't masturbate? And I'm like, oh, okay. Then, as you learn things about each other, then obviously the situation changes, and we add and change, and my sessions and the way I work with a client or a couple. I obviously, we're all online, and people can Google us and find us, and but really, when someone is out there and they're looking for a sex coach, how do you know what is right for you and what you should be looking for, or in a sex coach or a sex therapist, to, if someone that we're talking to is like, I would really like to work with somebody?
Well, I think this is one of the this question itself illustrates the importance of discovery calls. So discovery calls or free consultations. I see coaches using different variations to basically describe this opportunity to speak with us for free, to just, I like to say, a vibe check. So typically when you're shopping around for a therapist, you'd want to make sure you're finding someone that you resonate with. You might want to see representation personally in some part of the coach's identity. It's not required, of course, but you should ask yourself these questions when you're looking at their website. And then when you're not sure, just know that it's a good sign, I think, if a coach offers a free discovery call, because it's important to get to know and for them to allow you to ask them questions about their modality, how they work, just communication styles, go through all of these things, and that's the container for it.
I don't know of any insurance companies that cover sex coaching calls or sexologists calls. Dion, do sex therapists get insurance to cover them? I don't think they do.
It
most of the time.
depends.
It
It depends
depends.
on, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess certain, if you your basic license usually. So if certain, and it different country differs.
Right. So basically, folks, it's probably not going to happen to have your insurance company cover the calls, but just know that we are essentially we are not doctors, but we are kind of like sex doctors in a way, and I think it's important to address that, to respect the education and the level of training that each of us have. That's what I want to say about that, because I've been doing this for 10 plus years, and it's just something that I think is important for us to address as sex coaches or sexologists or sex therapists. Yeah.
And Dominique, to that point, you could be a sex coach and not have any credentialed education as well.
Right.
So that
Right.
is really important. It's not a regulated industry.
Right.
So that's really important point that you bring up.
Right. So I think it's important that the sex coach person is trained that you're working with, and has been doing it for at least a little while, at least. And yeah, they're, I don't know, they may range anywhere from $100 to $1,000 an hour. I don't know. It depends on who you're working with. So yeah, and just to respect that piece, that it's kind of like working with a doctor, right? Because we are so highly trained, but we just don't have the piece that allows insurance to cover anything at this. Most insurances won't cover it, even for sex therapy, which is a significant training for years and years and years, right? So yeah,
And
thank you
not
for
just
saying that, Nicole.
trainings. I guess it's not just training, but also the supervision that
Right.
some of us still get
Yeah.
from, yeah, from our senior even more senior
Hmm.
practitioners. Yeah.
And I think it's really, this is a perfect opportunity to note that all of us were Sex Coach U grads. And so this is an important aspect to when you see sex coach or you see the word clinical sexologist or intimacy coach, there's different ways of naming this profession. And some sex coaches I know from Sex Coach U have shifted the language to call themselves intimacy coaches because of the conservative climate that they work in. And um, things are getting tough out there. I'll just leave it at that. And so read through somebody's bio and website and see where they went to school. And a school like Sex Coach U has aligned itself over the years. And we're in over 85 countries. So it's a global training program that has really deep roots with the World Association of Sexual Health, American Board of Sexology. Um, those are key things to look for when you're shopping around for a sex coach.
Yes, very helpful. And so, kind of just to close this conversation, this was a live case study of a couple that I have personally worked with. Generally, when I do work with someone, it's always a little bit more dynamic, and it's not a one session type of situation. It takes several sessions. Sometimes it takes 6 months to a year to really solve some of these sexual concerns that people have. So, this specific situation, we felt like after 3.5 months that they had gotten to a place that they felt really good about. And as you can see with all of the people that spoke on this podcast today, that we all had different insight and different background and different things that we were suggesting. And it's not a one size fits all. And there's multiple different ways that you can get to the same result based on who you're working with and their background, their education, but also what you're sharing with the client, the practitioner that you're working with. So we will be doing more case studies. So if you love hearing about other people, stay tuned because we'll be doing some more case studies in the near future.
Or even drop us a questions with your examples and see if we can solve it.
Oh, that's right. If you would like to be anonymously on with your case study, and gosh, that's like thousands of dollars of free advice that you get and you don't even have to work with us, then definitely reach out on any of our platforms, and we might just host and give you some really great free advice. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, send us some love by sharing, hitting subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us connect to more incredible people like you. If you want to learn more about sex coaching or therapy, you can find us at sexandbreakfastpodcast.com, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at sexandbreakfastpodcast. The people helping us cook this all up are Michael Merle, creating our tasty tunes, dishing out our audio and video is Max Rainier, and our delectable visual designs by Brie Vilaubi.